You wake up in your bed. You feel completely safe. The doors are locked, the windows are shut. You reach for your phone and put on a true crime podcast. You listen to detectives unravel complex mysteries, forensic scientists analyzing bone fragments, and prosecutors building a case against a cold-blooded killer. It feels like a distinctly modern phenomenon. Humans are fascinated by the dark side of our own psychology. We are captivated by the idea of the cold case. But what if you had to investigate a crime scene that was completely devoid of DNA, fingerprints, or modern records? What if the crime scene was nearly 500,000 years old? For 99% of human history, surviving the natural world was hard enough. You didn't just have to worry about the cold, the starvation, or the apex predators stalking you in the tall grass. You had to worry about the person standing right next to you. Deep in the rugged Sierra de Atapuerca mountains of northern Spain, there is a sprawling, labyrinthine cave system. It hides the darkest, oldest, and most chilling secret in the entire archaeological record. To find it, you cannot simply walk in. You have to crawl. You must navigate a claustrophobic, pitch-black tunnel of limestone for over half a mile. The air grows thin and damp. The silence is absolute, broken only by the sound of your own breathing echoing off the slick rock. And then, at the very end of this suffocating path, the floor abruptly vanishes. You are standing at the edge of a massive 40-foot vertical shaft. It is a terrifying drop into the abyss. Paleoanthropologists call this place the Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. For decades, this shaft was considered an unreachable, dangerous void. But eventually, a team of daring researchers, led by paleoanthropologist Juan Luis Arzuaga, descended into the belly of the earth. They entered a cold, wet chamber filled with fossilized mud. What they found, buried in that thick, prehistoric clay, sent a jolt of electricity through the entire scientific community. It fundamentally changed everything we thought we knew about ancient human behavior. They didn't just find a few animal bones. They found the fragmented remains of at least 28 ancient human individuals. They belonged to an extinct species called Homo heidelbergensis. These were our distant ancestors, living roughly 430,000 years ago. The sheer volume of human remains in one single isolated location was unprecedented. It was a massive, subterranean graveyard. But among the thousands of jumbled femurs, ribs, and vertebrae, one specific skull stood out from the rest. It had been shattered into dozens of pieces. It was scattered across the muddy floor, waiting for someone to put the story back together. They named it Cranium 17, and Cranium 17 is the victim of the world's very first documented murder. Let us reconstruct what everyday life was actually like for the victim of Cranium 17. Homo heidelbergensis were not clumsy grunting brutes. They were apex predators. They were highly intelligent, highly social creatures with brains nearly as large as our own. They hunted massive, dangerous game. They tracked wild horses and prehistoric rhinos across the unforgiving European landscape. They mastered the use of fire. They built complex wooden spears perfectly balanced for throwing. They relied entirely on each other for survival. In a world this dangerous, your tribe is your only safety net. Social cooperation is the ultimate weapon. Without your community, you die. This makes the betrayal of Cranium 17 even more profound. The person who shattered the skull was not a stranger from a distant land. In the small, tight-knit hunter-gatherer bands of the Pleistocene epoch, populations were incredibly sparse. You knew everyone in your group intimately. You foraged with them, you slept beside them to stay warm. The person who swung the weapon that ended this life was likely a hunting partner, a rival for resources, or a member of the victim's own family. How do you solve a murder that happened 430,000 years ago? How do you prove intent across an ocean of time? You turn to the exact same forensic technology used in modern homicide investigations. You use a high-resolution hospital CT scanner. In the wild, bones break all the time. Ancient humans lived brutal, physically demanding lives. They fell off jagged cliffs. They were trampled by massive prehistoric beasts. They were crushed by falling rocks inside caves. But gravity and accidents are entirely chaotic. A tumbling fall leaves random, messy, asymmetrical fractures all over the skeletal structure. If a cave bear or a lion attacks you, the forensic evidence is obvious. The bones will show distinct puncture wounds, crushing bite marks, and deep grooves where teeth scraped away the periosteum, the outer layer of the bone. But cranium 17 was completely different. When Dr. Nohemi Sala and her team of forensic researchers analyzed the skull, they zoomed in on the frontal bone. Right above the left eye socket, they found two massive jagged holes. This is where the science becomes truly chilling. In a groundbreaking 2015 study, Dr. Sala's team utilized advanced 3D modeling and trajectory analysis to examine the biomechanics of these fractures. They didn't just look at the holes. They looked at the microscopic edges of the bone. When a bone breaks long after death, it snaps cleanly, like a dry twig. It leaves sharp right-angled edges. This is a post-mortem fracture. It is the result of dry bone giving way to the immense crushing pressure of thousands of years of cave sediment piling up on top of it. But when a bone breaks while the person is still alive, it behaves differently. Living bone is wet. It is flexible. It bends before it breaks. It leaves smooth, angled edges and radiating fracture lines that travel outward from the point of impact, exactly like a rock hitting a modern glass windshield. Cranium 17 showed zero signs of healing. If this person had survived the blow, even for a few weeks, the bone would have begun to knit itself back together. Osteoblasts would have formed a soft callus around the wound. There was no callus. The radiating fracture lines and the smooth edges proved conclusively that this was a perimortem injury. The strikes happened at the exact time of death. The weapon pierced the skull, penetrated the brain, and ended the life instantly. The two holes were almost perfectly identical in shape and size. They were not caused by a random tumbling fall against the cave wall. A person falling down a shaft does not strike their head on the exact same sharp rock twice in the exact same spot with the exact same angle of penetration. The forensic trajectory proved that the strikes came from slightly below and directly in front of the victim. The angle was remarkably consistent. This proves they were made by the exact same object, wielded by the exact same hand, in the exact same trajectory. This was not an accident. This was intentional, face-to-face, lethal blunt force trauma. Let us reconstruct the exact moment this happened. You are standing in the rugged Spanish landscape, 430,000 years ago. You are facing another human being. You are close enough to see the whites of their eyes. The person standing across from you is gripping a heavy, fire-hardened wooden spear, or perhaps a meticulously shaped stone hand axe. They raise the weapon. They swing it with terrifying force. The impact shatters the bone above your left eye. You collapse to the ground, incapacitated. But the attacker does not stop. They do not walk away. They stand over your body, they adjust their grip, and they swing the weapon a second time. They strike the exact same area with lethal precision. It is a calculated, deliberate act of homicide. It is the absolute oldest cold-blooded murder ever recorded in the archaeological record. It forces us to confront an incredibly uncomfortable reality. We often like to believe that extreme targeted violence is a modern invention. We assume that war, murder, and malice evolved alongside civilization, property lines, and agriculture. We want to believe the ancient past was a peaceful, simple Eden. But Cranium-17 shatters that illusion. The capacity for extreme calculated violence was already pulsing through the veins of our ancestors long before modern humans even existed. But the actual murder is not the craziest part of this story. The most baffling part of the Cima de los Huesos is what the killer did next. The Pit of Bones is not a cave where people lived. It has no natural light. It is incredibly difficult to access. It is a deep, dark, isolated void at the bottom of a vertical drop. So how does a brutally murdered body end up deep inside an unlivable, pitch-black abyss? The victim certainly did not walk there. Bears and cave lions do not drag their prey half a mile through narrow, suffocating limestone tunnels just to throw them down a hole without eating them. Gravity did not magically transport the body from the surface. Now, consider the sheer physical logistics of what happened next. A human body is incredibly heavy. It is dead weight. Dragging a lifeless adult male through the rugged, uneven terrain of the Sierra de Atapuerca is exhausting work. Dragging that same body through a pitch-black, suffocatingly narrow limestone cave system is nearly impossible for one person to do alone. This introduces a chilling new layer to the mystery. The killer likely had help. This may not have been a solitary act of rage. It may have been a coordinated execution. A group of individuals may have conspired against this person, ambushed them, and then worked together to haul the body into the darkness of the cave system. They had to carry torches. They had to navigate slick, dangerous drops. They had to push and pull the body through tight squeezes in the rock, all while surrounded by absolute darkness. The psychological toll of moving a murdered friend through a black labyrinth would have been immense. They dragged it deep into the suffocating, silent darkness of the cave system. They navigated the labyrinth until they reached the edge of the abyss, and then they threw the evidence into the void. Why did they do it? Were they trying to hide the body to avoid retribution from the rest of the tribe? Were they terrified of the dead, attempting to trap the corpse deep underground? Or was this a dark, complex funerary ritual, a way of returning the dead to the belly of the earth? Among the thousands of bones in the pit, researchers found only one single artifact. It was a beautifully crafted Acheulean hand axe made from striking red quartzite. It is a stone that does not naturally occur inside the cave. Someone had to carry it in. The researchers named this hand axe Excalibur. Was it a weapon? Was it a grave good? Was it an offering thrown down the shaft out of respect or out of guilt? We may never know the exact motive, but the forensic reality remains absolute. 430,000 years ago, An ancient primitive brain experienced deep, irrational rage. It committed a violent, coordinated homicide. And then it experienced the distinctly human urge to conceal the act. This wasn't just raw, animalistic survival. It was politics. It was anger. It was a cold, calculated attempt at manipulation and concealment. When you listen to a true crime podcast today, or watch a detective solve a mystery on television, you are not just enjoying modern entertainment. You are participating in a biological echo of a deeply ancient impulse. We are wired to be fascinated by the dark sides of human nature. For hundreds of thousands of years, understanding the intent behind a violent strike and knowing who in your tribe was capable of murder literally meant the difference between life and death. The pit of bones is a stark reminder of our dual nature. We are the descendants of incredible survivors, innovators, and caregivers. But we are also the descendants of killers. Cranium-17 was not just a fossilized artifact waiting in the mud. It was a person. And their death, hidden in the dark for nearly 500,000 years, is finally telling us the truth about who we really are. You wake up in your bed. You feel completely safe,